If you've ever found yourself carrying pain that nobody else can see, wondering if you'll ever feel like yourself again, then this conversation is for you.
Driven by purpose, fueled by passion, my words got power, my thoughts have action, motivation, stay gracious, that's greatness, be audacious, motivation, be audacious, innovation, be audacious, inspiration, be bold, motivation, be audacious.
Well, I am the co-founder of the Sterling Rose Sanctuary that helps people receive the deliverance and healing that they need so they can breathe again, move again, live again from the trauma and the grief that has suffocated and paralyzed their lives. Really became a certified life grief, trauma, brain, mental health coach, all of those things. After 2014, when our oldest son passed tragically in a car accident. And then our second son was murdered in 2019 with his girlfriend from an ex-boyfriend.
What if grief isn't something you're supposed to survive, but something you're actually meant to move through? This podcast is all about helping you unlock your inner greatness and live your best audacious life, and I'm totally thrilled to have Marcia Earhart join me on this episode. She's the founder of Sterling Rose Sanctuary. She's a grief coach, as well as working with people who are experiencing trauma. She's an author and speaker, as well as someone who has walked through unimaginable loss after losing both of her sons in separate tragic circumstances. And as we were talking, I kept thinking about how we spend so much time asking people how they're doing, but rarely do we give them permission to actually feel what they're feeling. And, Marcia has built her life's work around creating that space for people. And what she shared about healing and grief resilience and hope really stayed with me long after this conversation ended. There is definitely a lot to one. Stay tuned, because my conversation with Marcia is coming up. Hey, Marcia, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living podcast. I appreciate you for taking the time to be here.
Well, thank you, Audley. I'm very excited to see what we end up having a conversation about today. I've been looking forward to it.
Well, I often and always very much say how much I do appreciate these types of dialogues and conversations. The idea, Marcia, you and I will be speaking, and sorry, is it Marcia or Marcia?
Marcia.
That was
Marcia.
right. Okay, I don't know why I was thinking Marcia all of a sudden.
No, Marcia. It was Marcia.
My point, though, is like he says sometimes, you know what it is? I pay attention to names, right? And like a name like Audie is a bit different, so I want it. So when I thought, did I say it wrong? So I'm glad we clarified that. And yes, this is live, so we're just going to keep going. But the point I'm making here is to be able to engage in conversation and dialogue is just a wonderful thing. And the idea of someone else will hear us and potentially use that to impact their life in some profound ways is a beautiful process to be a part of. And I'm glad that I'm able to do this here with you. The thing we often talk about on this podcast always and often is that, we're all on our own individual paths, right? We're on a pathway, and, where it takes us, you don't know, but you take that step, and that's where the audacious comes in, because you still take that step forward regardless. On our path, there'll be obstacles, there'll be boulders, there'll be challenges, there'll be pitfalls, there'll be all sorts of things. And I often say that it's incumbent on us to find a way to get past that boulder, up, over, around, through, because on the other side of that is often where our greatness lies. We just got to get there. And right. That's where the resilience comes in, and the push past those situations and circumstances. And that's where you sort of spend a lot of your time encouraging that resilience and that faith in people. And so maybe as a starting point, I can get you to introduce yourself to our audience and talk about the work that you do and what's got you to the point that you're at now.
Well, I am the co-founder of the Sterling Rose Sanctuary, which is a nonprofit 501c3 that helps people receive the deliverance and healing that they need so they can breathe again, move again, live again from the trauma and the grief that has suffocated and paralyzed their lives. And then I'm a life grief, trauma, brain, mental health coach, a mediator, a heart sync minister, an author, and a speaker.
Okay. Got a lot going on.
Got a lot going on, and all that works obviously within our 501(c)(3). So I work with people all over the United States and right now in 6 different countries to bring healing so they can live in their created design. And I love it.
I can tell. I can tell. And those that do as much as you do, they have to love what they do. And clear that that's what I'm hearing from you. What drew you to into this direction?
Well, I've always had a heart to be present with people and to encourage people and coach them in life.
Hmm.
Um, but in 2014, we kind of took a shift. I'd done a lot of counseling in the past and coaching, but really became a certified life, grief, trauma, brain, mental health coach, all of those things. Um, After 2014, when our oldest son passed tragically in a car accident. And then the Sterling Rose Sanctuary was established in 2017. And then our second son was murdered in 2019
Mm.
with his girlfriend from an ex-boyfriend that flew in from out of state to kill them. So the heart really shifted in its purpose and intention um, in the year after my first son passed,
Hmm.
but even became more grounded as we continued the journey. And even since 2019, to really reach back and be present with
Right.
people and hold space for them.
So I mean, so thank you for sharing it. I mean, in your stories there and your experiences, it's like the grief layered on top of the grief, and so you go through the first loss, and you're imagine you're still processing, you're still trying to come to terms with your own feelings and and come to a level set, if you will, to only have to go through it again almost, I would say almost immediately. What kept you going?
Well, I have a very strong faith and a really deep, abiding personal relationship with Father and Jesus and Holy Spirit. And oddly, that really was my anchor. It was my hope. It was what resonated in me and what brought healing in me. I think, first and foremost, depending on where people come from, I do believe that the Lord came to heal all people.
Hmm.
It's what it says in his word. And I do see him healing. It doesn't mean somewhat, it means fully. And so as I sit before you now, I am healed. I am healed of the triggers. I'm healed of that deep sorrow, that place where it could be in the precipice of that pit. Because I invited the presence of the Trinity to be with me, to speak to me, to really fight over and fight with me, and to keep my mind steadfast on truth
Right.
instead of lies. Because I think we have to be careful. When we are in traumatic events,
Hmm.
we can be fed multiple lies that we start believing, and that manifests into our physical body, which then causes illness to
Yes.
start
Yes.
happening.
Hmm. Hmm. And that's kind of where that you kind of go down a slippery slope, so to speak. Like
Yes.
it just compounds and things kind of
It
get
does.
worse, and
And
it
that is
doesn't.
when
Yeah.
things get compounded. And it's when it gets complicated and complex because if you're not giving yourself permission to grieve and appropriating the tools that are necessary, then what happens is all of a sudden, just like when our second son passed, if we've not been doing all of those things, it could have imploded us to be immovable and
Hmm.
not be able to enter back into life
Hmm. Hmm.
because it is back to back.
Yes. Yes.
And in the midst of that, we had other losses. We had losses of friendships, losses of our son's community, the loss of our dreams, the loss of where, that which we knew. We really were not in our community. So that loss was very present of our own friends and our community. There was, the loss of what would ever be. And so there's a magnitude, and then the loss of my mother, the loss of mental health, because there were
Right.
some
Yep.
struggles there were some mental health struggles within our family. So, and relationships.
Yep.
So loss produces loss, but we do have choices in that of how it affects us and what do we do with that.
You said an expression, permission to grieve, and that resonates deeply with me because really what I hear in that is that it is okay to feel the way you feel. Oftentimes, in addition to the whatever we're experiencing because of that loss, we add to that by demonizing our feelings because we feel the way we do. We're like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't feel this way. And anytime you hear that word should, that's when you need to pay attention because there's usually judgments attached to that, right? And so the fact that we have permission to feel the way that we do, it's okay. You're allowed. Take that time. And so the way I sort of oftentimes frame it with myself, and I've used it for myself, and I've help when I'm helping others through their challenges, is you're going to feel this where you're at, and that's okay, and stay there for as long as you need to, but know that you can't stay there, right?
That's right.
Because our journeys are all going to be very, very different. So it's almost like it's treated as a rental, as sort of a property that you purchase, right? You're renting that space in that valley where it's not feeling good, but you can't stay there. And that's kind of how I sort of frame it in my mind.
Well, and I love that. And in the sanctuary, we have something called scheduled grieving. So I want to
Okay.
take this a little step further.
Okay.
We need, and we always say to our clients, have you given yourself permission to grieve? And quite often that can be emotive for them. As soon as I
Yeah.
say, I want to give you permission, that the tears start and the emotions,
Yeah. They're like, it's so
the
powerful.
floodgate.
I was going to say that's such a powerful even statement, a question to ask. It's so powerful.
Yeah, so the floodgates happen, and then it's
Yeah.
that place where they are now allowed. But what we say to them is when you're grieving, when we come to that place where we're emptied out, then please start speaking gratitude instead of staying there
Mm,
because you just released all of that. Now find the things that you can give thanks and have gratitude for. Like, I'm thankful I had my son in my life. I'm
right.
thankful that not only was he my son, he was one of my best friends. I'm thankful for the shared memories that, and to write them down because there's this transference from our head and our heart to the paper is so important in the transformation that's happening and that needs to happen so that and when we talk about scheduled grieving, there's some people that just can't grieve, so we say every day pick a time and schedule your grieving from if it's 12 to 12:30 in the afternoon. And when you go in, allow yourself to experience, put on some music that evokes and that place for you to be able to release where your body, your mind, your soul, your spirit, and the emotions can come forth. And then when you're finished, then start having gratitude. Change the music, change it to something where the frequency of that music is life-giving so that you come out because we're all going to go in the wilderness, but you know what? The Lord doesn't leave us in the wilderness.
Mm, mm.
So we have to know that we
Yeah.
can always come out of that
Yes.
wilderness
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
intention, with
Yeah.
intention.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I can remember an instance. I remember going through a really difficult, challenging period, and I didn't feel good about it. And I literally remember, and it was so profound because it was last summer because it was almost like an event or a moment. But I literally remember going, I'm not getting out of bed today,
Mm.
and I said I need to stay here and figure it out. But when I decided to get out of bed, it was like an event, kind of what you said there. I did, all right, let's go. And I was off to the races kind of a thing. So it was a literal, and I can vividly remember that feeling. And that's why I go back to take the time that you need. Take the time that you need. But I'm telling you, you can't stay there.
That's right.
Right?
No, you can't. That's why we want people to know You've entered, but you got to exit.
Yes, yes,
And
yes,
every
yes.
day you can enter, but you got to exit.
Yeah, that's right. You can't stay. You
No, you
can't stay.
can't stay because, you know, fish starts smelling really bad after it lingers. And
You're right.
you know what I'm saying? And honestly, what's going to happen if I stay in that place? I'm going to start feeling really worse,
Yeah.
and my body's going to keep the score
Yes,
of
yes,
that pain and trauma, and it is going to manifest itself
yes,
in ways that are unhealthy.
yes, yes. Um, I remember a friend of mine once was going through a difficult period, and he very much loves, like, he likes being around family that just charged him, energized him. And he was going through this difficult period, and we were kind of talking through it and working, but helping him through the process. And he there was some family function that he had, and so we went to this thing. And at one point we took this photo, and I remember I was taking the photo, and I looked at it, and out of everyone in that group, he had the biggest smile on his face. He was
Mm-hmm.
like overjoyed. I took the photo, and I immediately went to him and I said, "You are supposed to be going through the most difficult period in your life. Look at that smile that you have on your face. Look
Mm-hmm.
how happy you are." And I tell that story because I really think it's important to understand the things that give us joy and the things that charge us. And although we're not pretending to be happy, maybe I would say we're manufacturing our happiness a little bit, but that will help us sort of to feel better in that moment. It's not making anything go away. We're not pretending like it's not there. We're not ignoring it, but we're giving ourselves a moment of, yeah, okay. And I think the more we can do that, it'll help us, again, not forgetting nothing, not ignoring what's taking place, but help us through that process. I would love to hear your thoughts on manufacturing our own happiness.
I think when you manufacture it, you're not able to embrace the real happiness.
Hmm.
And so, what we like to encourage our clients is that you write down the things that make you happy, the things that would bring you joy.
Right.
And when I'm in those places, I really do feel joy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not having to manufacture it. Now, I would have to manufacture it if I'm going in a place I don't want to go.
Right. Right.
And for people grieving, they have to be very careful that they're not forcing themselves in situations that are causing additional stress to
Right.
them,
Right. Yeah.
because this is their journey. And what I want to say to them, find the things that bring that ultimate joy. So for me, I ask the Lord, I want to see every day where you show up. And so in my sorrow,
Hmm.
and it was present, the pain was visceral, it was raw, but I looked for where he showed up. And in the midst of where, and I love photography, so I take a lot of pictures. I took pictures that just to this day bring joy, because in that moment it's so catered to joy for me.
Yes. Yes.
And so we have to find, and even in the sorrow, and what I want them to understand, it didn't, it didn't just take away the fact that I was in a sorrowful time, but what it did is it gave me momentary moments
Yes. Yes.
of experiential joy
Yes.
that was fueling my body and my mind
Yes.
and my spirit. So I don't like
Yes.
manufacturing. I
Yeah, you
don't
said
like,
you said it far better than I did. I like your way that you said it, because that's essentially what I was alluding to with respects to the things that bring us happiness and joy, and finding ways to be as close to them as we can.
yes, but and your friend, I think being with people that we love, and everybody's different, but I also received great joy when I would go to be with my friends in North Carolina, because they were my tribe. They were the people
Yes.
praying for me. They were under, so being around them, I could laugh, I could cry, but the joy was sustainable. It was real, and it was ministering to every part of my cellular structure.
I love it.
And that's what we have to find. And if there are people in your surroundings that you feel tap you further into negativity and into sorrow, do not get around them.
Yes.
Do not. That's a boundary that needs to be put up.
You also you talked with your a brain health coach as well, and I really oops, oh, cute. Right on cue. Let's try
I
that
can
again.
actually see you really well when it goes off, though, so you
Did
know.
you?
Yeah,
Okay.
just so you know.
I actually had to get another light to kind of offset that initial light. So let's try that. Okay, here we go. So you're also a brain health coach, and I'd very much like to talk about the effects of trauma on the brain during these periods, like and I guess maybe what's happening biologically for us while with our brain. Can you something you can speak to?
Sure. So heart sync is a modality that actually all the parts correlate to the brain, which I think is really important. And I just got certified by the Amen Institute as a brain coach. And Amen Institute is the number one uh, institution that deals with all issues of the brain. And they do something called a SPECT scan that does this full in color uh, scan of your brain, and it shows where things are misaligned and where there is problems. And they work with people with Parkinson's, ADHD, autism, massive brain injuries, and anything that you can think of, depression, anxiety,
Right.
and trauma. So when we have trauma,
Hmm.
all the trauma is stored in the amygdala, which is in the back of the brain.
Okay.
And if we don't deal with that trauma, there are things that trigger that, and it stays right here. And um, it can become a very definitive and invasive part of our life because the trauma is in us. And so this has to be dealt with, and it can cause for us to experience depression and anxiety.
Right.
Also, due to the fact that when we're grieving, most people do not eat healthily. In the Sterling Rose Sanctuary, we tell people you need to do clean eating, no
Mhm.
carbs, no sugars.
Hmm.
Now, that's not popular because if I'm not feeling good, what do I want to do?
My potato chips and my snacks and fast food. Yeah.
And the reality is you're already sad, feeling anxious possibly, feeling some sense of depression. That will put you in a full-on acute state because your body needs the nutrition and your brain needs the nutrients
Yes.
in order to process and to have the health and the stability to work through those negative emotions. So let's talk about emotions, negative emotions. Emotions come from right side of the brain. Well, if I have negative emotions start tapping into and chiseling into my body, into my life, into the very aspects of what I'm doing. And so we want to deal with these negative emotions that are fueling and firing and get you to be able to return to joy quickly.
Right.
Because the sooner you can return to joy, the better your mental health,
Yes.
your physical health, your sexual health, your emotional, and your spiritual health. It affects everything. So when we're looking at the brain, we want to understand what's going on. And immediately when someone has sorrow, depending, now there's going to be some time where there's going to be a deep sorrow.
Sure.
Everyone who
Yeah.
has sorrow does not need to go on an antidepressant
Right. It's true.
because here's what happens, oddly, that also affects the brain and trauma. Now, that doesn't mean they shouldn't at some point. Sometimes they do need that. But what is most important is that they're getting the tools to be able to process, to be able to verbalize, that they're able to do the things, whether it's journaling, taking pictures, whether it's therapeutic art, whether it's, going horseback riding, whether it's running, walking. We also encourage them get outside. Why? Because the brain and the body needs to be in a place where life is ongoing.
Right.
We've got to, our brain knows what it needs, but see, when we get in grief, we kind of shut down. That's why, our slogan is breathe again, move again, live again, because one, you don't breathe well.
Right.
If your audience doesn't realize, breathing becomes very shallow in grief. So you're not getting the oxygen to your brain. So we do diaphragmatic breathing and teach people how to do some breathing because they've got to get some deep breaths and so the lungs, I want everyone to understand, the lungs hold grief.
Yeah. Yeah.
The lungs hold grief, and it will affect you. It is quite often when people come to me, it is not uncommon for me to see a continual aspect of bronchitis or pneumonia in them because the grief is being held within the lungs, and so sickness comes. And so we have to learn to deal, and also their eating habits. I mean, it all lines up.
All connection.
There's a connection with it all.
Yes. Yeah.
And so we deal with the whole body, the whole picture. So we've got to start doing that. And we tell people, get outside, because you become immovable and you become in paralysis, and you want to sit, you want to be in the places where there's not a lot of activity.
Right.
Okay. Well, we appreciate that. Go walk by yourself. Go walk on the beach. Go walk in a park. Go walk around your house. Get outside.
Do something. Yeah, do something.
Because it changes. And then we start moving, and we're getting a little different oxygen now because we're moving. And then once we start moving, now we're breathing, now we're moving. Yep. It gives us the ability, as we're working through this, to now start living again in the created design we were meant. Because here's the reality. When a traumatic event happens, when there's loss, and it doesn't matter what kind of loss it is, you die in that moment, and you need to give yourself permission. I'm dead, I'm done, and go in the cocoon, come back out and be the butterfly you were meant to be in this season of life. Let that go. Let that go.
Yeah.
I don't want to be those people again. My sons aren't here. I don't want to go back to that person.
That's right.
They're not here. I can't. I'm not trying to remake myself to be that woman.
Right.
I'll never be that woman in each of those. I also won't be the woman I was with my mother, because my mother's not here. Anyone who's passed from my life, the same with my father. We have to understand the dreams that I've had to let go and that died. I'm not that person either, but I can dream again.
Yes.
I can live again in fullness because I've got my wings, and I am that butterfly now moving into the spaces that were created for me to embrace in this season of life.
I love that. Marcia, I so love that because it provides so much promise and hope that it doesn't stop when the bad stuff happens. In fact, it's funny, sometimes you hear people will tell their story and they'll go through a difficult period or whatever it is that they're facing. A lot of people stop at the bad stuff. And I'm like, well, no. Like that's a cliffhanger. What'd you do next, right? What'd you get out of it? How did you move forward? What are you doing now? Where are you in the place? Like, those are the things that are really exciting, because what they do now is they turn into really powerful stories that can impact and inspire other people. And so it's not just when the bad stuff happens that the story stops. I'd love to hear. So thank you for that explanation of the physiology. I think it's really, really important. I think that and the attention to detail, the breathing and the getting outside, and all these things that they seem small, but they clearly they have huge impacts. I'm really glad that you shared that. If you were to maybe identify some sort of common misconceptions when it comes to healing that are out there that maybe you wish people understood more about, what would they be?
You can fully heal. I cannot stand when people say, I'll never heal from that. Please stop. Your body lines up with what you say. I need to say that again. Your body lines up with what you say. I am healed, and I am full of life. My body's lining up with that. And I have seen people be resurrected from places that one would never have imagined and fully healed. We do not have to live in that place where we're just not going to ever get over that. It makes my body literally tighten up when I hear people go, well, I know you're never going to get over that. Oh, please don't speak that. And I'm never going to get over, and I'll have to endure this pain until I die. Line up your mind, and your mind has to speak what is true.
Yes.
What is true is you're alive, you're still living, you have breath, you have purpose. Allow yourself to step into the purposes that you were created for and realize that you can be fully healed. Do not cheat yourself out by speaking these things over.
Right.
Just like when people have physical problems, they just say, yeah, I'm going to have to live with that the rest of my life.
No.
Well, not based on the God I serve. That's just not.
Well, they're sentencing they're sentencing them themselves, right? Like this, they're giving themselves a life. I don't know why that word was so hard to come out. They're sentencing themselves to something that they don't have to, right? It's not a life sentence.
It isn't. And here's the reality: grief is part of life. That is part of life. That will be a continuum. So we need to learn to embrace grief as our friend, to understand that because I loved, because I invested, because I made a deposit, then I am going to experience grief in this side. But you know what? That just makes me want to give even more. Yeah. That just makes me want to go invest louder, more bolder, love extremely outrageous, because our time is brief.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't want to pull back and not, because then guess what? It would be, I wish I should have, could have, would have, which is that is an enemy's death sentence on someone when they go, I wish I could have, should have, would have, or I shouldn't have, or I should. And I'm like, really? Do you think you have that much power that you alone could have changed all those circumstances?
That's right. That's right. That's right.
That's a lot. I don't have any of that kind of power, and I don't want to, and I'm not going to act like I do, because I could have done nothing to change the trajectory of either of my sons.
That's right. That's right.
Nothing.
That sounds like that language sounds like those who like to control and control things, and that's a whole other issue. But certainly that's what it sounds like when you say that. I kind of think that is during these moments of grief and challenges and struggles is even more reason to hold on to that audacious way of living. There's even more reason to be bolder and have the courage to live a bolder life, because I think when you do so, you can really see it for its fullness and everything it has to offer, including the grief.
Well, and part of heart sync is that they're guardian parts, and let me explain guardian parts because it goes back to the amygdala. When I've had trauma, I can have multiple parts that come in me, like anger, unworthiness, shame, guilt, all sorts of things. We call those fractured parts.
Okay.
Guess what? They're right here coming from my amygdala. And when a situation smells like, looks like, feels like, guess who pops in? Those parts, if they're unhealed. And they start reacting the same way as if they were back in that other situation. And they need healing. So have you ever had an internal argument?
Absolutely.
They're guardian. That's a guardian talking against true self. Because our true self knows what we need to do. And you'll be like, you really should be kind. I don't want to be kind to that person. They just annoyed the snot out of me. I don't want to do. Well, and you're having this literally inside. So true self is telling you, but that guardian part, because it's probably been wounded, something's happened. And it's like, nah. Because you know what? I know what's going to happen if I do that, and I'm not setting myself up. No, we're not walking down that road.
I'm thinking that maybe our guardians are the same thing, because your mind is saying the exact same thing to me, right?
I'm just giving you an example.
But it's true. But it's true, right?
but that has to come into the presence
Yes.
of the Lord and to be healed so that it operates from healing and we're not conflicted in our mind
Right.
and having internal arguments.
Gotcha.
That's
Gotcha.
part of healing, oddly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
the healing we're talking about.
Yeah. 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 Gripping Grace in the Garden of Grief. A lot of G's there. That's the name of your book. Tell me about the process of writing that. What were you looking to leave readers with when you wrote that book?
I didn't write that book for readers. I that book came out of my own journey of grief, and the
Mm,
Lord said it needs to be published. And there were some things He did instruct me to add to that. Um, it was part of my journey, but He had me compile it, and it really is a companion. What He said is this is to be a companion for those who are grieving losses, that feel alone, that they need to know they're not. It is I'm very specific about the pain, the
mhm.
processes of loss, but also the hope that is coming in those very fractured places. And the garden, there is several pages about all of us have a garden. It's a matter of whether we choose to go into the garden when we're invited.
So
And
much is
so
choice.
I write about my garden. I write about the places in that garden, the life, the places that didn't have a lot of life, why they didn't, how life gets procured in those places. And in that garden, Jesus met me. He was the gardener. I'm not a gardener. We had to have that conversation. And Jesus said, yeah, I know I am. Just about the pruning process, about the renewing process,
Mm,
and the streams of living water that come, and the abundance. I believe that each of us have this beautiful place, just like when Jesus went in the Garden of Gethsemane. I think we have that garden where we can go and lament. We can lay it all out. But unlike when Jesus left there, what we see is his redemption after the cross in that garden, because Jesus has already fully been victorious.
right.
We get to see in the garden with him where there is beauty from the ashes.
Mm,
And one of the things that I would say transitioned in my thinking, I would say broken, and the Lord, if I would say, I just feel so, he said, you're not broken, you're broken open.
mm.
A seed has to break open,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and you're not broken. You've just broken open. And with being broken open, there is more to come if you allow for the proper soil, the proper nutrients, the proper amount of water to come and feed you. And in that case, for me, it would be the Lord nurturing me, sustaining me, watering me, loving on me, allowing Him to speak the hard truths in my life, receiving those things, releasing the things that were toxic for me.
Right.
And then there's this flourishing that happens. And that's what happened. And that's what's still happening. And so
Mm,
the book really is to love well those in this journey, to come alongside of them as a companion, for them to know in the midst of the darkest despair, the remnant of the streaming light that is right upon them, shining forth. And to see that there are treasures that come from the places in the dark. and they need to look for them.
Yes.
Because when we've been in tragic situations,
Mm-hmm.
we get to carry the spoils from that tragic situation
We
with
do.
us.
We
And
do.
if we don't know what they are, then we missed it.
Yep.
We
That's right.
missed something, the
That's right.
grandiose to me. We missed that part of it that
Yes.
was just
Yes. Yep.
what we needed to come out with. So that's what the book is about.
I oftentimes say a mistake isn't a mistake until you walk away from the experience without the lesson. And so if you miss
Yes,
that, right, that's exactly what
yes,
that is. That's when you
yes.
truly make a mistake. Um, I'm, something that I ask a lot of all my guests pretty much when we sit here. I mean, after all, this is the Audacious Living podcast, and I think I'd love to get from your perspective what living audaciously means to you today, particularly on the other side of pain. What does that look like?
Well, living out loud, boldly, courageously, in the fullness of who I was called, created to be, with my gifts, my talents, my treasures, all for the glory of the Lord. Because I believe He makes us all audacious with the capacity to go and be and to be able to receive. And so for me, I love an audacious living. That's victorious living.
Mm-hmm.
That's a warring mindset to me. I'm all about it.
I love it. I love it. I have so. I mean, in addition to loving what you share, I love the fact we've had this opportunity to chat. For listeners that wanted to connect with you directly or learn more about the Sterling Rose Sanctuary, where can we send them?
They can go to www.thesterlingrosesanctuary.us or just look up the Sterling Rose Sanctuary. It'll probably come up, and my book's on there. And we serve if they need healing. They can fill out a form and send it in, and we'll get with them. And if they want to be a partner and give money so that we can serve others, because we allow for partners to help us to be able to serve those who do not have the financial means, which most people do not, with the mental health problems that we're facing in the crisis today, have the means to pay for services. And it gives us the ability to go and be with them or to bring them to us.
Gotcha. Well, we will make sure that we put those appropriate contact details in the show notes and encourage our listeners to connect to learn more, to become involved. So absolutely. So thank you. And Marcia, thank you for doing this today. I really very much appreciate the time here and the insights and the perspectives. For me, the journey on the other side of pain is where I get the most excitement and inspiration from, because of what that has the potential to do for others, right? It's so easy to think that when you're going through something, nobody on the planet can relate, has any idea, knows what it feels like, and I'm on my own. But when you start to hear journeys and you start to hear, and they're not going to be the exact same. I don't want to minimize anyone's situation or circumstance. They're not going to be the exact same. But when you look at the strategies, how you get on the other side of that pain to step into your greatness, I think there's definitely some lessons to be learned there. So thank you for all of that. And thank you again for being a guest on the Audacious Living podcast.
Well, thank you. I've so enjoyed it. And I want everyone to go live audaciously and be healed and breathe and move and live in their created design.
Awesome. And we'll keep encouraging them to do so. So thank you. Appreciate you, Marcia.
Thank you so much, Audley.
Back we are here on the podcast, and thank you for Marcia for being here. When I think about our conversation, and as difficult it is to talk about grief and healing, we still found some room to have laughter in that conversation, and that's honestly part of the lesson when you think about it. What stood out to me is that healing isn't about pretending the pain never happened. It's about refusing to let the pain become the final chapter of your story. Marcia shared something powerful. She talked about giving herself permission to grieve. leave, but also giving yourself permission to leave that place. Enter, but don't stay. I was really struck by her idea of scheduled grieving too. I've never heard of that one. The thought that we can intentionally create space to feel, process, and then reconnect with that gratitude. And that's something I think many people need to hear as well. Too often we avoid our pain, we completely act like it's not there, or we get trapped inside of it. And Marcia reminds us there's another path. And that leads perfectly into today's audacious insight, because sometimes the strongest examples of resilience aren't found in avoiding hardship. They're found in what people choose to do when life changes forever. It's time for an audacious insight where we take a quick look at something happening in the real world that reflects the power of bold thinking and intentional action. After losing her husband and facing years of public scrutiny, Sheryl Sandberg made a deliberate decision to study resilience, grief, and post-traumatic growth rather than allowing tragedy to define the rest of her life. She documented many of those lessons in her book, Option B, helping millions better understand how people recover after profound loss. Her story reminds us that resilience isn't the absence of grief. It's the willingness to keep participating in life while carrying it. The goal isn't to erase the pain. The goal is to keep growing beyond it. If you'd like to learn more about Marcia, her book, Gripping Grace in the Garden of Grief, or the work being done through the Sterling Rose Sanctuary, be sure to check out the links in today's show notes to get connected directly to her. And if this conversation that we had today resonated with you, make sure that you're following the podcast. Share this episode with someone who might need it, and please, please, please leave a review. It helps more people discover these conversations. Remember, healing doesn't always happen all at once. Sometimes it begins with a single decision to take the next breath, the next step, or simply believe that tomorrow can be different than today. You may be carrying more than you realize, but you're also stronger than you think. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, keep living life audaciously.
Driven by purpose, fueled by passion, my words got power, my thoughts have action, motivation, stay gracious, that's greatness, be audacious.